Okay guys, so welcome back again. So in this video, we'll be doing a quick tutorial on Nextjs 13, which is still in beta, but I guess that the API won't change much since it's in beta right now. So without wasting any further time, let's dive into the tutorial. So to get started with Nextjs 13, you can use the automatic installation here and the commands provided here. So if you're using npx, then you can simply use this command, which I'm going to use. Or if you're using yarn or pnpm, then you can use this thing here. So let's use this thing here and let's get started here. So what I've done is this, that I've just used this npx create next app at latest command with the experimental app, because we need to check out all the experimental features of the Nextjs 13. So once I did this, I provided in the name of the application, and then what I like to use TypeScript, I simply selected no, and for ESLint I simply selected yes, and then I have created the project here. And then when I'm inside VS Code or I open the project here, we see the different layout of the Nextjs application. So in this video, I would be like comparing Nextjs 13 with the Nextjs 12 at certain times. So if you don't know about Nextjs 12, just ignore it. Otherwise, you can see the differences between 12 and 13. So once we open this app inside VS Code, we see that we have this extra app directory and we have the pages folder also. That is typical for a Nextjs application to create pages inside your application. Since Nextjs 13 provides you with incremental adoption, that is, you can use the pages folder also to create your pages, or otherwise you can use the new way of creating pages, that is using the app folder. So if we have a look at the app folder, we have a couple of files here, that is the globals.css, layout.jsx, page.jsx, and page module.css. So to define an index route inside your application, what you need to do is that inside your app folder, you simply need to create a file called page.jsx. And the name of the file has to be page.jsx. That is, you cannot name this page as index.jsx. It won't work. So to create a page inside this app folder, what you need to do, you need to create page.jsx. And if we have a look at the page.jsx file, we have this typical Nextjs boilerplate code here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove each and everything from here, and I'm going to write my h1 here, and I would be simply saying it Nextjs 13 beta. So if I save this, we see that our application was running here, or yep, our application is running here by doing npm run dev. That is a typical Nextjs command. And on the right hand side, we see that our application is running, and we see this Nextjs 13 beta. So if I do ++, then I would be seeing this change here, or I need to reload the page. So this is the first basic difference between the 12 and 13 is this that you need to define all your pages inside the app folder here. So now if you're wondering that where is the _app.jsx file or app_app.tsx file, it is present here inside this layout.jsx file. So whatever globals you need to set, or you were setting inside your _app.jsx file in Nextjs 12 or earlier, you can now do that inside the layout.jsx file. So if we have a look at this code here inside the layout.jsx file, we see that we have a typical HTML skeleton here with the head here and the body here and the HTML closing tag here. And then we spit out the children, whatever is present inside this page.jsx inside this layout file. So the beauty of this thing, or the beauty of this approach, is this, that we can define a global navigation bar for our application here inside the layout.jsx files, which we were used to do inside the _app.jsx file. So what we can do, we can provide in a nav bar here. So we can say nav like this, and here we can provide in a UL like this. And now here inside the UL, I can create a couple of li elements. So let me create home, and then I can create one more li, and this can be post, which we are going to do in a moment. And if I save this, we see that we have this thing reflected here inside our page here. So let me increase the font size, or let me increase the zoom level here. So we see that we get this home and posts here. And now whatever page we are going to create inside this app folder, that would contain the navigation bar. And now this children can be inside the main tags here. That is the main HTML element here. And now we have the children here. Nothing changes here. So now if we want to create a new page inside our app folder, what do? We need to create a page. We need to create a folder as the name of the page. So if I create a new folder here, so let me go to this app folder. Let me create a new folder about, and we do not need to create a file called about.jsx to create a new page inside this application, as we were used to do inside the pages folder, because we simply created a file called about.jsx, and that would be the route called /about. But here inside this 13, we need to create a folder called about, and inside this folder, we need to create a file called page.jsx. And again, we do not need to create a file called index.jsx. We need to create a file called page.jsx. And now let me simply create a functional component here, and it would be called about page, like so. And if I save this, and if I manually go to this about page, we should see that page here. So we see that we are on the about page, which is reflected here, and we are on the /about thing here. And this global navigation is again coming up from this layout.jsx file. So let me do a couple of things here. So now before moving ahead with the post link here, let me show you that how do we create links here. So firstly, initially, we need to import link from Nextjs. So next link like this. So previously, we need to wrap this home inside an anchor element or the A tags. But now what do we need to do? We simply need to provide in the href attribute here, that is / like this. And we do not need to provide in the surrounding anchor tags here to this home. It is automatically done by this new link element from next link package here. And the similar thing I'm going to do for the post page also, or the post link also. So this should be link, and then this should be wrap the post thing here, and the href would be equal to post, like so. So if I save this, so if we go to home, we are on the home page. If we go to post, we see that we get a 404 error. And now let's create a page called post. So to create a page, what we need to do, as we did in the about page, we need to create a new folder inside the app directory, and we need to call it post, like this. And then inside this post directory, I need to create a new file called page.jsx, or tsx if you are using TypeScript. So rfc, and this should be called post page, like this. So if I save this and if I reload the page, we see that we are getting this post page. And the beauty of this Nextjs 13 is this, that every component we create here, unless and until we explicitly specify that this is a client component, every component is a server component. That takes advantage from the React server component, so that we can have the loading states, we can have the error states, and only HTML is served to the client and no JavaScript unless and until if it is required. Before doing anything in the post page, let me show you one more thing. So if I go to the layout.jsx file and let me create one more link here, that should take us to the about page. So this should be about, and let's call it about. Let's save it. And if we go to the about page, we see that we have this about page. And now let's go to the about page once again inside the page.jsx file. And instead of simply rendering out this about page, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it an h2 here that should say about page. So let me cut and paste it here. And now I want to have a button, and that should simply say click me, like this. And what do I want to do on click? I want to handle it. So let me simply show an alert called 123. So if I save this, it would give me an error. So let me save it and let me reload. We see that we do not get any thing here on the page, but if we open a terminal here, we see that we get an error here. That is, event handlers cannot be passed into client component props. So if we scroll up, we need to specify, or we need to make this page as a client page. So for every JavaScript, or if you want any interaction with the page from the user, then you need to make the component as a client component. Currently, this component is a server-side component or a server React component, but instead, to use this on-click event handlers, or if you want to use any kind of a state inside this component, that is, if you want to use state, use effect, or use ref, or whatever use hooks you are going to use, then you need to make this component as a client component. And it is very easy to do that. You need to simply go at the very top of your file here, and you need to simply say use client, like this. So if I save this and if I reload the page, we see the page is present here. And let me minimize this terminal again. So now if I click me, we see that we get an alert here. And now whatever you write here, that is whatever you write here inside this component, that is any JavaScript you write inside this component, this is served to the client over the JavaScript bundle. But if this were not this were not a client page, that is if it were only a page like this, that is without the use client directive here at the very top, then this is all server side components, that is only the HTML is rendered to the client. So this makes your websites very fast. So now we see, or now we know that how to use client components and server components. So let's do something more. That is, previously we were used to have some getServerSideProps or getStaticProps or getServerSideProps or getStaticProps or getStaticPaths, not params. So how do we do that inside this Nextjs 13? So it is pretty simple to do. So for that, I'm going to use this API called this API, JSON placeholder API, to fetch a list of 100 posts. So if we go to this URL, that is JSON placeholder typico.com/post, we get a list of 100 posts. And if we go to this route here / the ID of the post, then we get the individual post. So that's what I'm going to use inside our application to show a list of 100 posts. So we need to do this inside the page.jsx file inside the post folder, because we want to display all the posts inside this post folder. So what I can do, I can write my JavaScript directly here. That is, I can directly make a query to my database or to my protected API, or we can use any kind of API secret keys here inside this post page until and unless we are not using the use client directive. Because if you are using the use client directive, then the JavaScript bundle would be sent to the client. But if not, then this is all rendered on the server and only the HTML is sent to the client. So what we can do, we can say const response equal to await fetch. And this fetch is the same fetch that is used in the web API, but it has some superpowers from Nextjs, or rather Nextjs provides some superpowers to this fetch API from this thing. And now since we are using await here, we can create this function as an async function. So export default async like this. And now we can call that route endpoint. So let me copy it and let me go here and let me paste. And now what I can do, I can simply say const post equal to await response.json like this. And now inside the div tag, what I can do, I can keep it on this second line. So h2 would be this post page. And then I'm going to simply render out a pre-tag here just to show a JSON list of all the posts. So I can simply say json.stringify post, null, 2. So let me save this and we see that we get back a list of all the 100 posts here. So let me minimize one size smaller. So we see that we get all these posts here inside our post page. And now what we want to have is that we want to click a link so that we can go to the individual post ID, so that we can see that how do we use Slugs inside this app folder or inside this post folder. So that is again pretty simple to do. So firstly, let me remove it from here. So here I'm going to say post.map. Then we have the individual post, and then we want to return a div like this, and then we want to have a link element that should and again link is imported from next link, and this div should have a key, and this is all typical React stuff. So post.id would be the key, and the href would be something. So post / and here we need to use template string or template literal, and here we can simply say, and this again needs to be inside curly braces, I suppose, and here we can simply say post.id, so that we can go to / post / the ID of the post. And then here inside this thing, we want to render out the index of the post, so we can say post.id and then post.title like this. If I save this, if I reload the page, because this is all server side here, we see that we get back a list of all the posts here, or the titles here, or all the links here. If I click any of the links here, we see that we are getting a 404 error because that route is not created, that is post and the ID of the post. So what we need to do To create a slug inside this post folder, what we need to do, we need to create a new folder here. And again, new folder, not a new file. And this should be called ID. That is, whatever params you are expecting, you need to call that thing here. That is inside box brackets. So we are expecting an ID. So we created a folder called starting box bracket, ID, and closing box bracket. So if I save this, or we don't save this because we need to create a new file again inside this folder called page.jsx, which would render out the individual posts. So again, let me create a new functional component. So post page, or post with ID page, like this. And if I save this and if I reload, we see that now we get this page here, that is post with ID page. So now to get the prop here, that is the ID of the post here inside this page, we can console.log the prop. So if I save this and if I open my terminal here and if I reload the page, we see that we get this props here, or this props object here, that contains the params and the search params. So currently the params contains the ID here and the search params does not contain anything. But if I provided here any search params, then that would be also populated here. But we are interested in this params. So what we can do, we can directly extract the params here, or we can simply do it like this. And here to fetch the individual post, we need to again call that fetch API. So what I can do, I can create a new function here. So function, or this should be an async function. So async function get post by ID, like this, and this expects an ID. And here what we can do, we can copy the previous fetch call from our previous page. So let me copy this and let me paste it here. Like this, and here we need to pass in the ID somehow, so we can use the template string again, and here we can say / the ID of the post, and then we can simply say const post equal to await response dot JSON, like this, and then we simply return the post here. And now what we can do to get the data inside this post page, so let me minimize the size a little bit. So here what we can do, we can simply say const post equal to await get post by ID, and here we can simply pass in params dot ID, that is the ID of the post. And since we are using await here, we need to mark this function as async function. And now what we can do, we can simply render out the pre tag again, once again, and here we can simply json.stringify the post here. So json.stringify post null comma 2. And just don't worry about this, that whether these are getStaticProps or getServerSideProps, because I would be coming to that in a moment. So if I save this, we see that we get this post here, that is post with ID page. And if I go back to this post here, we click on this, let's say 26 post, we should be getting that 26 post, that is this ID here. So this is how this works. And by default, whatever call we are making here using this fetch API inside this Nextjs 13 application, they are all getStaticProps. That is, this page is only generated at build time. But what if you want to revalidate, or you want to revalidate the call to this link so that you get the latest data? It is pretty simple to do. You need to simply define and you need to simply put an option here, that is next. And here you need to put in the revalidate property, and let's say 10 seconds. So every 10 seconds, if a request comes in or a couple of requests comes in, this page would be again created, or this page would be again built. So this is about this next revalidate thing, that is pretty similar to getStaticProps on our Nextjs 12 application. But what if you want to use something like the getServerSideProps, that is, if you always want to call this function again and again whenever this page is being requested by the client, that is something which is typically possible from the getServerSideProps, because getServerSideProps run on every page request. So for that, what you can do, instead of providing this revalidate option, you can simply provide in the cache option, and here you can simply provide in no store. So if I save this, then this function or this call would be always run whenever a request comes to this post with ID page. So this would be always called. And that is this next revalidate and this cache no store is all present in the production application and not in the development application, because in development, even if you do not provide this, then this would always be always called. So this is about this thing. And now if you're wondering that right now I'm using the fetch API and therefore I'm able to provide these options here, that is next revalidate and cache no store like so. But what if you wanted to query a database somehow? That is, if instead of calling the fetch API directly like this, we want to query a database using Prisma ORM, or we are using the MongoDB database. So how do we write all those queries? And we can provide in these options, that is revalidate and no store. So for that, it is pretty simple to do. We need to go to the next docs here. We need to go, so you need to scroll to the very bottom here, and here you see that we have segment config options. So here you have a couple of options and you can go through them, and here we have that revalidate is false, or otherwise you can provide a number here, and then you can go to these go through these options to read more about them. And yep, so it is pretty much self-explanatory if you just go through them. So if you simply wanted to have this force dynamic, that is, if you want to use the getServerSideProps, that is run the function on each and every render or query the database on each and every request from the user, you need to simply use the force dynamic thing here inside this dynamic export. That is, let me show it to you. So if this were a database call, what you need to do, you need to simply, instead of using this thing here, because that is not present inside Prisma or Mongoose, that is only present inside fetch. So if this were a call to a database somehow, that is prisma.db.query. So what you need to do, you need to simply say export const dynamic to be force renew, I suppose. Force dynamic, that is force dynamic rendering and dynamic data fetching of the layout. So that you can do here, that is, instead of auto, you can simply put in force dynamic. So then this call to the database would be run on every request from the user. So that is something you can go and check in the docs. And now let's come to this layout thing here once again, because this is something new here inside Nextjs 12. That is how we can nest layouts inside layouts. So we saw that our main layout consists of this layout. That is, we have a top navigation bar and everything is rendered below that. But what if we want to have a post page or a post layout with individual navigation? That is, only the post page should contain one more layout or one more UI layout inside this post page, and that should not be present inside the about page. The about page should only contain this navigation link, that is a top navigation bar. But the post page should contain more navigation link, like maybe a sidebar, maybe a right sidebar, or maybe some top tab bar or something like that. So that is pretty simple to do. So you need to go inside the post folder. So let me increase the font size here. So you need to go inside the post page or the post folder, and you need to create a new file called layout.jsx. And here what do we need to do? We need to export in a functional component again. So layout, or let's call it post layout like this. And here what we can do, we can simply say post layout, and let me put in a couple of UL elements here. Here I can say, so some link, I'm not creating a link here, and let me some link to like this. And this is again a server component. That is, this is again server side rendered. You can make a call to your APIs inside this component directly. You do not need to worry about API keys being rendered to the client or sent to the client, because this is all rendered here on the server, and then only the HTML is sent to the client. So if I save this, and now if I reload the page, we see that we got this thing here. That is, if I go to about, we see this about page. We do not see that this navigation thing here. And if you go to the post thing, we see that we get this layout. But our posts are missing inside this layout. Previously, they were present here. So that is because inside your layout, what you need to do, you need to create some kind of a div element or a main element or whatever element. And here you need to render out the children like this. Like this, and this children comes from here, I suppose. So if I save this, our posts are present again. That is, all the posts are present again. And this is something kind of similar to Remix, I suppose, or there was an outlet there inside Remix. So this is something similar to that. And if I go to this post, fourth post page, we see that we have this post layout here again, which is not present inside the about page. So this is how this layout thing works, and you can nest layouts within layouts and within layouts. So if you wanted to create one more layout inside this ID, within this post with ID page, that is, if you want to create a third layout here or a third layout, right? So inside this post with ID page, you need to simply create a new file called layout.jsx. So layout.jsx, and here I can export in a functional component, and let me simply say post, not pest, but post ID layout like this. And here we need to spit out the children again. So children, so here we can get the children. So children, and then here I am going to simply spit out the children. So let me save this, and if I reload, we see that we get this layout again. So that is post ID layout, which is only present inside this post with ID page, but that is not present inside the post page. Post page only contains the post layout, but post with ID page contains a third layout here, which I have not, which only contains this title here or whatever it is. And then we have the post with ID page. So this is how you can nest layouts within layouts. And now let's see that how do we throw an error, or how do we handle errors inside our application. So that is pretty simple to do. So let's go to the about page here, or let's go to the post page here. And what do I want to do? I want to throw an error, and I want to cache that error. So let's say instead of this thing, so let's say that is if post dot length greater than 0, and this is only for demonstration purposes, I want to throw a new error, that is, wow, we have posts. So wow, we have some posts. So this is only for demonstration. So if I save this, we see that we get this error here, that is unhandled runtime error. So what do we do? How do we show a custom error page? So it is pretty simple to do. So we need to create a new file called error.jsx. So let me create a new file called error.jsx, and let me create a functional component. So post error like this. So if I save this and if I reload, so what happened here? So we see that we do not see the thing here, and it is because this error component needs to be your client component. So we need to create this error component as the client component, and if I reload, we see that we get this message here, that is post error. But if we wanted to see the same message that we throw here, that is, wow, we have some post, we have one more prop coming in here, and that is the error prop like this. And here we can display in the error inside the paragraph. So we can simply say error dot message like this. So if I save this, we see that we have this message here, that is, wow, we have some posts. So this was only for demonstration purposes, that is how do you show errors. And again, as you can see that it is present inside your layout, that is layout within the post layout, and then within that you have this post error. And the same thing you can do for the individual post also. You can create a separate error page for this thing here. And now let's see that how do we, and once again I need to tell you that these are all reserved names of files, that is page.jsx, layout.jsx, and error.jsx. So let me show you one more thing, and that is loading.jsx file. So if I create a new file here, that is loading.jsx, so RFC, create a new functional component. So loading post, and this should say loading post, and here you can create your own beautiful UI to show a loading skeleton or something like that. And if I go to this post page, and I need to stop throwing the error from that page, so let me comment it out. So let me reload. So if I go here, we saw a flash of that loading indicator there, that is loading post. So what we can do, we can go to this ID of the post, and before we return the response, we need to wait for a couple of seconds to show the loading indicator. So what we can do, we can create an async function here called wait, which resolves in after some few seconds. So you can copy this code from here, or you can simply use this code to simply wait for a couple of seconds. So before returning the post, I can simply say await wait of, let's say, 2 seconds. So if I save this, and if I go to the post page, and if I go to any of the individual posts here, we see that we get this loading post indicator. So once again, so if I go to this page, we see that we get loading post. And the same thing you can do for everything. That is, here we have this loading indicator or loading skeleton. But for loading out all the posts that is inside this post, you can have a different loading layout, so that you can show a loading indicator when all the posts are being loaded here. So that's something you can try it on yourself or by yourselves. And now let me show you one more thing, that is how to redirect to a not found page. So that is pretty simple to do. Again, I'm going to use this post.length thing here. So instead of throwing an error, I want to show that user that this route doesn't exist. So what do we need to do? We need to import something. So import something from next navigation. This is a new package here, that is from next 13. So here we can simply use this thing here, that is not found. So if post.length is greater than 0, which is always there, so I can simply throw a not found page just to show you that is how do we show a not found page. So if I save this and if I reload the page, we see that next not found. That is, though we see all the UI here present here, but we get this page here that says next not found. And if I wanted, I can create my custom error page here. That is, instead of next not found, I can create a custom not found page. So I can create a new file here called inside this post folder. I can create a file called notfound.jsx. And to get a list of all the reserved key file names, you can go to the docs here, and you can search it here. It is somewhere here. That is what are the reserved file names. So here we can say we have the layout, we have the page, we have the loading error, we have the template, which is still not out. So that's what I won't be talking about. And then we have the not found page here. So this is the convention here, and here I can simply export in a functional component again. So not found page like this, and here I can say post all posts not found. So let me save this, and if I reload the page, I should be seeing this thing here, that is all posts not found. That is, we are rendering out this not found page. But if you wanted to render out a different not found page for this post with ID page, that is something here, that is some different variation of this not found.jsx file, you can do that here inside the ID folder. So now the last thing, that is how do we use CSS here. It is pretty simple, and it is the same as before. That is the way we were used to do inside the Nextjs 13. That is, we can use the module system module.css files. So inside this file here, what I need to do, I need to create a new file. So let me create a new file inside this post folder, and here I can create a file called page.module.css like this. And here I want to create a single class called bg. All right, that is background color to be red, so only for demonstrations, background red. And now to use this page.module.css inside this page.jsx file, what I can do, I can simply import that file. So import styles from page module.css, and here inside this h2, what I can do, I can simply say class name equal to styles.bgred like this. So if I save this, I should be getting that thing. So before doing so, I need to remove this if block here. So if I reload, we see that we get the styles here using module.csx file. So it is pretty same as before, so I'm not talking much about that. So before we end up the video, one more thing. That is, how do we locate our components, that is individual component inside the application, because we do not want to create or write each and every component inside the page.jsx file. So there are two ways to do that. So let's say if we want to extract this component inside its own individual component, so what we can do, either we can create a new folder here called like the previous way, that is components, and then we can create a new file here called let's say post title link dot jsx like this, and I can export in a functional component again, and I can simply copy this piece of code from here and let me paste it here. And here we can pass in the prop called post, because we need that thing here. And now we also need to import the link here from next link. So this post title link is complete, and now instead of returning here, we can simply return out the post title link component. So we can say post title link, and here we can pass in the individual post using this post thing here, and we can pass in the key. So that would be post.id. So if I save this, we should not see any change here inside the application because we are using the post title link. But there is one more way to co-locate your component inside the pages folder or the post folder itself. So what I can do, I can simply move this file to our post folder, because this post title link is required only inside this page.jsx file. It is not globally required to any other part of the application. If that is so, we can save this file here. If we reload the page, we see that nothing changes here, and we can see all the stuff here. So this is how you can create your components either inside the components folder if you want to do that. Though it is not required to call this folder components, this can be named as any name by any name, but that is a convention to call it components. Or otherwise, Nextjs 13 provides you with a way to co-locate your components within the page or within the page folder in which they are required. So I created this post title link inside the post folder itself. So the same thing you can do for the post with ID page. That is, if you want to use a component here that is only available to this ID page, you can simply create a file called whatever name you like for that component to be, and you can place that file here, because Nextjs only renders out this page.jsx file, whether it is present inside this folder, ID folder, or post folder, that is this folder. And yep, so that's all about this tutorial, guys. So it's still in beta, so I've not covered each and everything, but I've almost covered each and everything to get you started with Nextjs 13 beta. So that's all about this video, guys. So if you liked the video, do hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel till now, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you, bye bye, tata, take care, and have a good day and have a great day.